A pastor. I'll just close with this story. I was a pastor of a church, and I was called to do a job I didn't really want to do, to be an administrator of a seminary. Didn't want to do that. And I got there, and I missed preaching. I like to preach, and all of a sudden I'm pushing papers and being in meetings all day. And so I was delighted when one day the pastor of the church where I was now a member called me up. He said, "Richard, listen, I've got to be out of town tonight." He said, "But normally I'd be ministering in a retirement home here in town." He said, "Any way you could fill in for me?" I thought to myself, can I fill in for you? I haven't preached in about a month. I thought, I've got all these sermons welling up within my soul here that need release. I thought, I'll pull all those together and I'll preach the mother of all sermons to these poor senior citizens. I thought, some of these people aren't that far from glory. There's probably a lot of questions they've got about the life to come and the final judgment. So I began working on this sermon, pulling out my commentaries. I thought, I'll do a Greek word study on the word for retirement, and I'll address all these issues. And my wife called, and she said, as we were talking, I said, "By the way, Lisa, tonight after dinner, I'm going to have to slip out. I'm going to be ministering at a retirement home tonight. I'm going to be preaching there." And my wife, who always is looking for a party, said, "Well, hey, she said, the children and I haven't heard you preach for a while. Maybe we should come with you. It sounds like it would be fun." I said, "No, Lisa, that's a bad idea. Just don't even get started thinking that way." I said, "It's not going to be fun. I'm going to be serving God," I said. She said, "I didn't know those were mutually exclusive." I said, "Yeah, and besides that," I said, "I know full well what you're going to do." Because, you always get these ideas about how much fun something's going to be, but I said, as soon as the sermon's over, I said, people are going to want to talk to me. They're going to want to ask questions. And I said, it's just a policy with me. I don't go home until I've spoken to every person that wants to talk to me. I said, I could be there for hours. I said, I can't have you pulling on my coat sleeve, saying that you're bored and you want to go home, because I'm staying there till I've talked to every person. She said, "Well, we'll bring books. We'll just read while you're ministering to the multitudes." So I knew I wasn't going to win. So I just said, "Okay, but just stay out of the way. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing." So that night, I'm preaching to all these people, and it's the most bizarre congregation I've ever had. Nobody's looking at me. Everybody's looking sideways. I thought I'd stumbled into some home for people with neck conditions or something. I finally looked the way they're looking. I realized they're all looking at my kids. My wife has discreetly placed the kids up against a wall out of the way of the professional, but these senior citizens have all spotted them, and now they're just entranced by them. There's a woman sitting near my daughter, reaching over and touching the lace on her dress that my mother made. There's two older men, a couple rows back. They're having a gunfight with my two boys. They're shooting at my sons, and this kind of a large woman sitting in front of them. They're ducking behind this woman. And my boys don't know what to do, so they're just shooting back. And not one person's listening to me. I was so miffed, I closed my sermon off abruptly, never even got to my Greek word. It was like, all right, there'll be no Greek for you tonight. You weren't paying attention. I closed in prayer. I said, "Folks, you may have noticed my family's over here if you'd like to meet them." There's a stampede. All these white-haired folks swarming about my family. They're like 7, 8 rows thick of people waiting. They're telling my kids jokes. They're talking to my daughter. And they're talking to my wife. Not one person spoke to me. Listen, I'm just completely ostracized. They just walked right past me, right over to the kids. So I think, I guess my work is done. I guess in that abbreviated sermon, I must have somehow addressed all the questions these folks had. I guess I can go home now. But I can't get to my wife because there's like 8 rows thick of people waiting their turn to talk to my people. So, excuse me, ma'am. So can I get through here? Can I get to my wife? I finally got over to my wife. I said, "Lisa, I'm ready to go home now." And she looked at me and she looked at all the people and said, "Well, Richard, it's just a policy with me and the kids. We don't go home until we've talked to all the people that want to talk to us." And then she looked at me, I thought rather smugly, and said, "You should have brought a book." So, just standing there with nothing to do. And all of a sudden, I see something that absolutely mortifies me. I see this very frail-looking elderly woman. She's got a push cart with the handles right here, a little basket in front, and she's pushing it very feebly down this long hallway, which would be fine, except that in her basket is my 8-year-old son, Mike. And I can just see this woman having a hernia, a heart attack, and the nursing staff asking what happened. I said, "That man's son was in her basket." I said, "Mike, what on earth are you doing? Get out of that poor woman's basket." The woman said, "Oh, it's all right." She said, "I told him to get in." She said, "I'm giving him a ride." She said, "Tell me if I'm going too fast for you now." I looked at my son. He shrugs his shoulders like, Dad, what can I do? The lady told me to get in a basket. Don't leave without me, Dad. Just stay close by, Dad. But she gets to the end. I holler, it's all right. Mike, get out of the basket. Say thank you to the lady. The lady said, it's all right. She said, I'll bring them back, she said. By the time she turned around and got back, everybody else has left the room. I grabbed Mike out. I said, Mike, say thank you. I said to the lady, you probably need to get going. I knew it would take her a long time to get back down that hallway. She looked at me somewhat bewildered and said, well, I've got to give a ride to your other two children, she said. It would only be fair, she said. So my 6-year-old son, Daniel, dutifully climbs in the basket. Dad, don't let him turn the lights out, Dad. Let's stay close by. By the time my daughter comes back, they're making announcements on the intercom. If anyone is visiting, they should have left half an hour ago. So we're hurriedly making our way out to the door. We get in our car. We're backing out of our parking lot. And as we're leaving, my son, Mike, speaks up. He says, Dad, why did those people do that? And I didn't know really what to say at first. Finally, I said, well, son, tonight, God knew that these people needed joy. And all I had was a sermon for them. I had ministry. I could go minister to them, but what they really were looking for was joy. And it didn't take them long to find who had it on the premises. And they made a beeline for them. Let me tell you something. If you want to impact your world for Christ, I don't know any apologetic any more powerful than the joy of the Lord. You just have the joy of the Lord when times are bad and times are good, when profits are up, profits are down, when an employee lets you down, when things are going great. If they just keep seeing consistently, under any circumstance, what the joy of the Lord looks like in your life, you'll never lack for people who want to take you aside and ask what you've got that they don't have. Folks, but have any of you lost your joy over the last while? Just know nobody took it away. The economy didn't take it away. Your competitor did not take it away. At some point, you just decided that under the circumstances, you just weren't going to hold on to the presence of God like you should anymore. And you made a huge sacrifice, not just for yourself, but for your kids, your spouse, your grandkids, your employees. They deserve to have you filled with the joy of the Lord. Let me just tell you, and I say this with the awareness that I've got to race out the door right now and catch a plane. And you know, I've been doing that for a while, racing to catch a plane, going through security, getting in cramped little airplanes, hoping to make my connection. And there's been times sitting in the airport where I was anything but joyful, and these verses came back to me. And God just said, don't preach what you're not experiencing. If you can't have joy in your life, don't tell anybody else about it. Don't tell anybody else that Christ could make a difference in their life if they look at your life and you're joyless yourself. First, let the joy of the Lord so fill you up that everybody's coming to you asking if they can get what you've got. Let me just close by just encouraging you. Sometimes it seems sort of like a frivolous thing. Talk about the joy of the Lord. I guess I'm just at an age where I realize it's not so frivolous. In fact, the fruits of the Spirit after love, what's this? Number 2, joy. God says, when you're doing it right, joy is going to be coming out over and over and over again. Don't make excuses for not having joy. Don't point somewhere else. Don't say eventually, when things, say, like my son, if everything just aligns perfectly and everything is as I want it to be, then I can have joy. No, there's always going to be a stranger walking in the room, a phone call taking place, something that'll take that away from you. But if your joy comes from abiding in the presence of God, nobody can ever take that away from you. So don't go to bed tonight. Don't lay your head on the pillow tonight unless you know you are experiencing the joy of the Lord. Well, let me take a moment to pray, and I'll be done. Lord, thank you for being a God of joy, for being a God who delights in the laughter of his people. And Lord, there have been times when if someone had asked me if I served you, I could eagerly say yes. If someone asked if I was faithful to you, if I believed in you, I could eagerly say yes. But when people have asked me if I enjoyed you, oftentimes, to be honest, I would have to say no. I would have to say, Lord, I serve you, but I don't enjoy you. I don't get joy in having time with you. Lord, I know full well that if I was enjoying your presence, I wouldn't have to discipline myself to pray to you every day. Lord, just help me to be reminded again that there's joy in your presence, that it ought to be a place I eagerly long to be in. But Lord, it's not a place I leave at the end of my quiet time, but your presence goes with me. And wherever we are at the workplace, under the worst of circumstances, we can still be enjoying your presence nonetheless. And so, Lord, may this room, may these people be filled with laughter in the days to come. And Lord, may the joy of the Lord be so evident that without having to tell anybody anything, our employees, our staff, they know that the joy of the Lord is in us. It's just so obvious to anyone around us. May that be so. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.